Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Gillian McMichael is a master certified coach, a passionate teacher, healer and guide, having dedicated the last 17 years to helping others navigate their journey to self-discovery and professional fulfillment. Her mission at Full Circle Global is to offer specialized professional development programs to aspiring and existing coaches, and enriching life development programs to those seeking transformative life changes. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. This is Coach Mal, and today on the show, special guest from Edinburgh, Scotland. She is Gillian McMichael. Why don't you give her a big hand and welcome her? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
We're delighted to have you here, Gillian. Really.
Lovely. Thank you.
So let's jump in straight away, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
How did it all begin for you, your coaching journey?
Okay. So this is kind of taking us back to the early 2000s, about 2002, 2003. Wow. I was working in human resources, and I was kind of at a bit of a crossroads between did I want to stay? Did I want to go, leave my company? And I wasn't quite sure. And I decided just to buy the newspaper. And it was something that I don't normally do, but I was, felt compelled to buy the newspaper. I bought the newspaper and started just to look through the job pages at the back of the newspaper at the time. Yeah. And there was this tiny little advert, like a little kind of postage stamp kind of advert saying train to be a life coach. And I just don't know how. It's like kind of a needle in a haystack. I don't know how I saw it. Anyway, I did. And so I followed up the inquiry. I went for an introduction day and I thought, wow, this is something definitely that I'm interested in. And so from that point, coaching became my focus. I trained, I qualified, loved everything about the program, and also learned an awful lot about myself at the same time as well. And then after that, kind of thought, right, how do I do this as a full-time living? How do I make this a business? How do I make this, something that I can do for the rest of my life? And so I got to work and set up my own business and left my job, and I suppose the rest is history, really. But I think, I always say to people, I wasn't quite sure whether coaching found me or I found coaching. But whatever happened, we found each other, and it's been a really amazing relationship so far to date.
Absolutely. I can just hear it from your language, right? Your energy is still there. I'm sure it has grown even through the years, right? You say you found coaching, or coaching found you, and I say I bumped into coaching. And I think it's kind of the same, and yet we kind of had to leave that comfort of whatever it was before, and for you it was human resources. So I'm just curious, Gillian, obviously there are people who are from HR listening to this podcast. What do you say? I mean, HR, obviously, you've got to like people. And obviously, coaching is the same, but I'm sure there's some difference, right?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think because my job was human resources with an element of learning and development to it. So I was always really passionate about developing people, and always passionate about learning myself. And I think that's one of the things that I learned through my first coach training course that I did, was that I'm a real passionate about learning and growing as a person. So a lifelong learner, I suppose. And I think the difference is with my job in human resources, it was very advisory. So I was still kind of coaching in a way, but it wasn't the same way in terms of what I would describe now, which is more self-directive coaching through what I've learned through the International Coach Federation and all the programs I've done over the years. And so for me, there was still an element of advising and telling, whereas obviously as a coach, that's not our job to do that. We're not there to mentor or to advise in any way. And so I felt also with my job, I could only take it so far, because there was other responsibilities that I needed to do. I had other kind of objectives rather than just purely sitting and talking to people and helping them grow and develop, which is a shame because in that in itself is an awesome job. But I just wanted to do more of this, and I just felt a little restricted in my role at the time, and that's when I decided to leave and to set up my business.
Why do you think there are still people who are kind of saying, no, coaching's not for me, because coaching is just a different thing. I'm managing my people. I do a great job managing my people. And obviously the role that I play, right, in marketing, for example. Why do you think people say that?
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of concept, isn't it? I suppose, well, only from my perspective,
sure.
I think sometimes it's a lot easier to tell and to direct an individual than it is to coach them.
Certainly.
And I do a lot of work with organizations around teaching line managers and leaders to be coaches in their workplace so that they can have better conversations with their teams and help them perform to the best of their ability. And so I think there is something, and it's interesting, I read something, and I think it might have been from Harvard Business Review a number of years ago, and the concept that perhaps team manager or team leader might kind of over the next kind of 5 to 10 years disintegrate and you become a team coach.
Wow.
Which would be quite interesting if that happens, because and I know, and I'm sure those people who do take more of a coaching approach can see the rewards of how their people are more empowered. They've empowered themselves. They take more accountability. And actually, as a manager, and I have been a manager in kind of the industry that I worked in, even as an HR professional, as a manager. But if you keep telling and not asking, then you end up doing quite a lot of the work yourself.
That's so true.
And really what you want to do is you want to be able to do your job and actually encourage your team members to do their roles. And so I think if you can kind of connect the both to take more of so it doesn't mean to say that you don't become a manager. And there's times as a leader and as a manager that you have to direct. There are times when you have to take that lead and be much more directive because something just needs to get done. But there are also other times where you could take much of that kind of more collaborative style of leadership or management, where you're taking much more of a coaching approach.
And it reminds me of situational leadership, right?
Absolutely.
Where we can obviously direct. That's part of our role. We can manage, we can motivate, we can facilitate. And yes, we can also choose to listen, to give the space, give them the trust to be able to be accountable of their own things that they need to do, rather than shouldering everything. And I've seen, I'm sure you have as well, Gillian, these managers who are just shouldering on and saying, I just need to because I'm it. Without me, and it's so hard to even take leave, to take my holidays, I've heard all of this, right? And so that makes me often think, of if only they found out what else they could be doing besides their common modus operandi of just doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. I think though it's difficult sometimes because when you're under pressure and when you're kind of facing quite tight deadlines or you need to deliver on it against projects and so forth, I think you can get in that habitual way of working. And I think there's also, certainly the leader, because I do a lot of executive coaching as well, the leaders that I work with, they have a huge sense of responsibility that they have to be there, make sure that they're doing everything. And I think sometimes that can take over and you can kind of lose sight of that actually, the team, if they was led and managed maybe in a different way, might be more useful.
Yeah. Let's move into the very interesting how it all started, right? When you graduated, did you take some time before you kind of stepped in fully into this coaching gig, being an entrepreneur yourself? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I obviously started as I was going through my qualifications towards the latter part of it, I started to really think about, well, what kind of, if I was going to have a business, what kind of business would I have? And because I loved training people and developing people, in the UK at the time, there were only 2 coach training providers.
Oh, wow.
So there was only two, and obviously there's lots in America at the time because it was obviously that's where it's coming from, and and I knew that I wanted to coach and I knew that I wanted to develop people, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. So I did lots of research, and actually I coached 100 people for free just to build up my experience, my credibility. So I did all that whilst I was still kind of working my notice period and everything. And then after that, that's when I kind of set up the business. And I just had this, I don't know, this brainwave. I don't know what happened. Again, just this idea. And I thought, oh, there's nobody else training, because I was living in Scotland at the time in Edinburgh. So there was nobody training in Scotland. We didn't have any coaching presence in Scotland at all. Wow. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to speak to the ICF, the International Coach Federation. I'm going to see if I can design a course with them and see if it can get accredited and globally recognized with them. And so I set about it. So I was coaching people, and I started off kind of small, doing some more life coaching to begin with. So I mean, it took me 3 months to get my first paid client. And after giving up my full-time job, I was kind of running out of money. And I was like, right, I really need to get a client quickly. Anyway, it just so happened that I got myself a life coaching client,
Beautiful.
Which actually didn't pay a lot at that time, but was definitely my first paying client. And then quickly after, a friend of mine said, oh, I'm going to introduce you to somebody that my husband plays cricket with. He's a managing director of a property building company who builds kind of more modern houses. And I said, great. So I went along, had a conversation, had a coffee with him. And he said, oh, we've just let go of our coach. We've been working with him for a couple of years and we're looking for somebody fresh. Would you like to come and work with our board of directors and our senior leadership team? I was like, wow. And I was, and it was just, and that's just how it happened. So, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of, at the time, phoning people. And in fact, we have, I don't know whether you have it where you are, but certainly in the UK, we have this thing called the Yellow Pages, which is a big telephone directory of all the businesses. And I remember sitting on my living room floor, phoning these businesses, because the internet had not really started. It wasn't really out there at that time in 2003. It just kind of started to come out. So there was no websites. I didn't have a website, so I had to try and build up my business through that whole traditional, sounds awful, but cold calling. And I remember phoning 100 people in one day and getting one appointment, quite soul destroying, but also when you got it, it was like, yes, got this appointment. And so gradually I started to build up my reputation as a coach, and I was doing life coaching and then corporate coaching. But also alongside that, I decided to write my first certificate in professional coaching practice program, which then got accredited with the International Coach Federation. And I did exactly the same. I pinched the idea and I put a very small advert in the newspaper. So this was maybe about 9 months after I started my business. And I thought, I'll just see if it works. And it was a different advert, but, I didn't say want to be a life coach, but I just said to anybody, if you're interested in learning more about coaching, this is what the course is. And I got 100 inquiries, and that's just how it all started. And so in kind of 2000, and I think it was 2005, that was my first training course, October, and we had 12 delegates, and it just took off from there. So that's how it started. A lot of energy being put into it, but it was well worth it because it genuinely paid off.
Well done. Wow. Cold calling 100 to get one. I mean, that's
dedication, right?
Oh my gosh. My hat's off to you, Gillian. And then, doing that ad and getting 100. It's like, when I'm listening to this, I hear that you knew what you wanted. You put the effort in, you stayed with it. And then obviously you had that thought of doing the things that you've seen done before, perhaps even innovating, doing it differently a little bit, getting the results. Isn't that what it's all about?
I think it is. I mean, I didn't realize until later on in over the years. I mean, obviously I've been coaching now for nearly 20 years, coming up 20 years at the end of this year. And so for me, I kind of didn't realize that I'm quite opportunistic, and and I didn't realize, I don't say this very often because I don't like saying it about myself, but quite entrepreneurial at the time when I look back and think there was a gap in the market, and we didn't have a big coaching presence or coach training presence. So at the time, you know, it was difficult because I had to educate people. I mean, I remember calling a big company up and speaking to the managing director, and he said, "Oh, it's just tree hugging. This coaching is just a load of nonsense." He said, "It's all woo woo." And he said, "Anyway, I've got no time for this." And he put the phone down, and I was
wow.
"Oh my goodness me," you know. And so it's just so interesting that, you know, there was a lot of education that had to be done at the time. And that's another thing that I think I realized about myself, is that whole sense of teaching and supporting people was something that I was really passionate about. And until doing that, I didn't realize how much that was so ingrained in me.
So you still currently run your coaching program? Wow.
Yes.
And obviously still doing executive coaching and life coaching as well?
Yeah, so I've got a blended approach really with my coaching practice. So I do a lot of executive kind of work now globally with a lot of executives to do that. I also do a lot of well-being and wellness coaching, because 10 years ago, I also trained as a meditation teacher. I'm a yoga practitioner and teacher, and I use the principles of yoga into wellness alongside Ayurveda and also Reiki healing. So I do a lot of other kind of stuff as well. So I try and bring that sometimes into my wellness coaching, but I also do a lot of private clients, so life coaching stuff as well. Sometimes around career, sometimes around relationships. And I do coach training, but obviously the coach training, a bit similar to your business, really. The coach training aspect has grown and evolved over the years. And so now we're for a wide range of training programs.
Yeah, wonderful. You know, one is obviously, I'm sure there is that progress, as you're saying, right, from that one program to a couple of programs, and then added more stuff into it, and then kind of widen your so-called repertoire and your reach as well, from local to global now. A little overwhelming for someone just coming out, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely.
I'm going to ask you for a couple of insights, obviously. You've got 20 years. What could be a couple of wonderful insights that you want to share on the show today?
Sure. So for any coach starting out, or even when they've got experience, I would say the golden nugget for me was not to take rejection personally. So when you do knock on doors, or when you try to develop your business and you don't get the client that you were hoping to work with, then try not to take that personally. I don't know whether I've kidded myself over the years, but I always say, well, they're just not ready for me. But it's kind of a little joke for me. But actually,
That's
we're not everybody's cup of tea, right? And so if you're not suited, because that relationship is so important, if you, for some reason, the chemistry isn't there, then it's okay. Because again, the other thing is, what I've noticed over the years is that, and my grandma always said this to me, but as one door shuts, another one opens. And I think that's been very true for me. And that's another piece of advice I would give, is that don't worry if it's a no. It might not be a no forever, but if it is, it doesn't matter, because there'll always be another opportunity waiting around the corner for you. You just need to be open and receptive to see it.
Beautiful. I kind of feel that the changes in the market has obviously shifted a lot of things that we were doing, even pre-COVID. We obviously have a lot more coaches in the market and a lot more acceptance, I guess, in different parts of the world. And then, of course, there are places where they're still very new to coaching. What are your thoughts about what is happening in our market today?
So I think you're right. I think there's definitely been much more kind of awareness and acceptance that coaching is a very powerful development experience. And so I think the awareness has been lifted quite significantly. I think in terms of those up and coming areas, I think those are quite the exciting kind of countries or areas to look at, because I think when people get kind of to understand what coaching is really all about, then you can start to see that picking up momentum. And so I think funnily enough, we're in quite an exciting time. I would say that we may be, dare I say, moving into a new paradigm of coaching. And so what I mean by that is that we've all had through COVID and are still through this pandemic experiencing some level of trauma in some way, shape, or form. And that might be the fact that we can't go to our workplace. It could be the fact that we've lost people. It could be the fact that actually we don't have a job anymore. Or it could be the fact that actually just our whole lives have been shaken upside down and we've been forced to look and to live in a different way. And I feel this is a really important role for coaches as we now move through this and out of this, because mental health is on everybody's lips. It's a really big hot topic for the right reasons. And I think that through coaching, we can really support people have greater well-being, greater connection with themselves, and to hopefully provide them with a safe space where they can connect their mind, their body, and their spirit, because that's what we need at the moment. We need that sense of collectiveness within, and also to help. And I think for me, it's difficult sometimes to do it on your own, to kind of think, okay, well, I need to make some quite significant changes, or I need to look at how now I'm going to be living my life beyond this experience. And so that's where I think coaching can really come in. And I believe that coaching is really, although it's been around for quite a long time, I believe that there's going to be a whole new energy around coaching and more people investing in themselves, because, self-help has been around for a long time. Everybody can pull off the book off the shelf and buy a self-help book, but not everybody then puts those principles into practice. And I think that's where the beauty coaching comes in, is that we can help people be accountable to themselves to go and do that. And also it's a conversation that you don't normally have, and I think that coming out of this, when we've been so hemmed in and restrained, that now's the time to embrace the new, because we are all different. And I think that's what I think is happening, is that people are realizing that we're different now than we once were. And obviously we evolve and everything, but this pandemic has forced us to be different and to look at life in a different way. And so for me, that sense of moving into that new paradigm, meaning it's not just about actions and goals, it's more about purpose and more about connection and belonging. And so I think there's going to be a subtle shift, or maybe it's going to be a big shift. But I think as coaches, for me, this is a really exciting time for us to be in.
Certainly. It's that getting ready, right? It's like, going through the 9 months, if I were to give this analogy with that whole parent carrying a child for that period. Then it's the after effects of it. When the child gets birth, there is this whole newness in it. There is probably going to be a lot of change as well, and a lot of adjustments that needs to come through, and the time you sleep, the time you wake up to feed the child and all that. And then there's different stages. So I kind of figure that life is like that as well, where it's this parallel that is happening, where we're experiencing what we're experiencing, and yet there's this space where we have to experience the new as well and get comfortable with that again. I'll tell you this story, Gillian. It's like me walking now, just out for exercise, right? Doing my jog or my walks. And then you see someone approaching and you're like, shall I say good day? Shall I walk away? Shall I give you your space? Shall I wave? Shall I smile? Shall I? And all they can see is this, right? So like,
absolutely.
There's this newness of experience. And I agree with you. There's this adjustments needed. And I think that this is where coaching can play a part.
Absolutely.
And you talked about very important thing about that whole mindfulness and the well-being of people. And obviously having gone through this period of time, there is this whole grave need. In a sense, people are crying out, but they are not reaching out for help. They are perhaps being locked down for a period where they've not experienced this openness. And I'm just wondering, what do you think is the approach where coaching will be able to play in this meeting points of that vastness of that void
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's always been the case when I look at coaching. Years ago, coaching was seen, especially in a corporate environment, that coaching was something that you did when you weren't performing well. So it was something that you did if you were naughty or not doing your job well at work,
Yes.
And I think the whole kind of coaching image has changed quite significantly from when I started to where it is now. But what I also do feel is that at times I think it is a very private experience for people. And it's also a very intimate experience for people. But I think it takes courage to say, actually, I need to change something about my life, or I need to change something about myself, or actually to invest in myself. And I think this is what the problem is. We're very good at investing in materialistic things. I'm talking from a female perspective: shoes, handbags, makeup, or clothes.
Same with me. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so we're very good at investing in those types of things, the things that most probably make us feel good, but doesn't necessarily make us feel good forever. It's a short fix. It's a short-term fix, but it's a good one at the time because it makes us feel better about ourselves. And I think what we're going through now, and I think this is what I think will come out of this experience that we're all having at the moment, is that people will realize that actually the best thing to invest in is themselves. And yes, it might make you feel vulnerable. Yes, it might make you feel exposed. But if you find the right coach to work with, they are your champion. They're your safe pair of hands. They're the people that will catch you when you fall. And there is no judgment. And I think that's the bit that we need to remind people of, is that there's no judgment. Whatever you say in a coaching conversation, whatever you feel, if you cry or you're vulnerable, it's okay. Because that is part of your growth, that's part of your development. And I think that's the bit, if we can help people connect with that and give themselves permission that it's okay to talk about their intimate concerns, worries, to say that they're not happy, to say that they're frustrated. It's okay to do that because you're in a safe, trusting environment where there's no judgment.
Definitely. I hear this so often now. We in Australia, we have a campaign called Are You Okay? And it's a day dedicated to that, asking about, are you okay? And I'm sure you know the recent song, right? In America's Got Talent, when this person came up and sang the song, It's Okay. It became a worldwide hit. And I think it's that little silence, it's that little quietness within us. And we kind of know that it is kind of not okay to just remain silent about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's this yearning inside each one of us. I think including coaches, right? We all need development too. Not just being the ones that are brave and saying, it's all right, I'm good, when it's not. So it's what you say about the courage.
It is. And I think that point is really important because obviously I'm sure there'll be lots of coaches listening as well. And I think it's so important as a coach that you get coached yourself, you get supervision, you get the support that you need, because if you are working with people in that way, you need support too. But also, just because you've got your qualification, it just shouldn't stop there. You need to invest in, continue in that professional development, continue in your personal development, because I believe the more work you do on yourself, the better you will be as a coach, but also you'll become a better human being, a better citizen, the more investment that you do in your own development.
Totally. I'm tempted to ask this question to you, coming up at 20 years again, if there are anything that a chance to go back in time and say, probably I would have changed this, or would have done this differently. Anything comes to mind?
That's a very good question, actually. You've got me there. I need to think about that one.
That's good.
I think for me, there's always lessons to be learned. And would I do anything differently? I'm not sure that I would do anything differently. Apart from most probably trusting myself more in the earlier days. I think I doubted myself quite a lot because, it's new. Although I had some great successes very early on, there were times, when it wasn't as successful because recession hit in 2009 and things changed for us as an organization at the time and for myself. And so I think going back to thinking about that particular time, I think there's two things really. One is to continue, to trust myself and believe in myself a little bit more when there was wobbles. And I think the second thing would be always stay true to your vision. In terms of what I wanted, because I think before the recession, my company got very big, and actually, as much as that was great, it brought a huge and a whole host of different challenges, and actually took me away from doing the work. I then became a leader and a managing director, and actually it took me away from doing what I wanted to do. And then when the recession hit, we had to restructure the whole thing, and we had to more or less start again. And that then led me back into doing the work. And that's, I think, the key thing is to stay true to your vision, but also kind of keep yourself steady and trusting yourself.
There are times when a little bit of a reset is needed.
Absolutely.
And then there are times, and I'm asking this because there have been experiences where coaches have walked away from coaching. And again, nothing wrong with that. Some have gone back to the corporate world. Some are doing really well as well. What would be your thoughts on this, where if there was a line in the sand to kind of say, this is when you kind of say it's time to give up and face the music, right? Even though, yes, passion can pull us certain level or certain heights, and then purpose can take us further, as what you were saying. And yet there could be a time, I don't know. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I think it's a very individual experience for different people. I know when I look back at, the people that I've trained over the years, some people have gone on to be very successful coaches. Others have decided that the training was enough and it's not what they wanted to do. Others have done it and then gone back into industry, as you've said. And I think it's around personal choice. I think not everybody is a business person. Not everybody likes selling and promoting and marketing themselves. And I think, so I think some of the people that I know have gone back into industries because of that very reason. And so therefore they've wanted it to work really, but have really struggled with attracting clients and so forth. And we're all different. And so I suppose it depends on your own personal circumstances and choices as to why you might want to go back into industry. But what I do believe, and I really do believe this, is that actually once you've trained to become a coach, that coaching skills, the coaching approach, the coaching mindset, I don't feel that ever leaves you. I think that is something that stays, it's inherent, it becomes who you are. And so even though those people might go back into industry or struggle to make their business a success, that doesn't mean to say that they've lost everything, because there is still that deep
that's beautiful
approach, philosophy that resides within. And I think certainly that's my thoughts on the matter anyway.
I love it. And I so resonate with what you just said. Coaching and the whole experience of understanding who I really am and not being afraid to be who I am. It came out, and it actually helped me become a better husband, better father, better friend as well, I think. If I ever walked away, and I hope I won't, but if I ever do that, I think it'd still be so much part of my everyday life,
Yeah, it will. And I think that's what I think as well. I mean, because obviously there's been times when, especially when the recession hit for me in 2009, do I go back into full-time employment? Do I carry on doing this? And it was a real hard slog. But I kept true. But that's the thing. I did go back to that vision. I thought, no, I'm going to stick with this and see what happens. And I rebuilt and it worked. But I do agree. I think that what coaching's done for me, just as you've described, it's made me a much better person, a human being, a daughter, a mother, a wife, a sister, a friend, as you've described. And I think those principles now around the coaching philosophy and because I've learned so much about myself over these years, I do feel that has had a major impact on everything I do, from my relationships to just in my relationship. Well, it's mainly about my relationships, but my relationships with others, but also my relationship with myself as well.
And just aligning that with the community, right? And that community of coaches that we surround ourselves with. I know that you're a part of the ICF. EMCC, and as well AC. I kind of read in your bio.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us, because you've got that experience. I'm part of the ICF, have thought about the one or two of the others. Not quite there yet with my decision. And I'm sure that others who are listening in will be wondering, how do I get into one of these communities? What was the benefit of that? And like for you, you're in community with 3 organizations. So love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
I mean, the main one for me primarily is the International Coach Federation, obviously, just like yourself. And that's something that I suppose I've been with them from when I started. I think the reason why I joined the other 2 was because there's always different ways of doing things. There's always different amazing people that you can meet along the way.
That's true.
I went along to a couple of conferences from those other organizations and really liked what they were doing. It's a different set of competencies. It's a different, but actually their ethical practice is just as strong. And I felt, well, again, because I'm a maximizer and I love learning, I thought, well, let's just keep the scope open. I mean, as I said, our training courses and everything I do is ICF through and through. I mean, if you cut me down the middle, you would see literally ICF all the way through. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. But I do think it's good sometimes to engage in other activities because you do meet so many different people.
It's true. Yeah, talking about the ICF, we're in a wonderful space. I am interviewing master coaches. We are a small community of us around. What would you kind of advise the younger ones coming in and, they're working up the ladder, right? ACC, PCC. What would be some of your thoughts on that journey?
So the first thing would be keep going, because for me, when I got to Master Coach, it's not just the achievement, because it's a massive achievement. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of work. And for me, it was like, oh, amazing. I was so happy, delighted, in fact. And but it's not just about the recognition or the credential. For me, it's about the journey. And again, I go back to the learning journey, but actually, as you grow from ACC to PCC, there's a big leap in terms of how you coach and how you show up in your practice as a coach, in terms of that presence, the evoking awareness, and how you just kind of get underneath kind of the issue a bit more quicker. And so there's a really big leap, I think, from ACC to PCC. And then there's an even bigger leap from PCC to MCC. And for me, I have to be honest, probably one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had in terms of learning and training and developing myself as a coach, because equally as much as learning how to coach at that real high level of master coach level, you also learn so much more about yourself along the way, in terms of how I ask a question, how I hold the space, how I use my intuition, how do I kind of ask those really direct, succinct questions without really having to think about it. And that requires trust. It requires self-belief. It requires getting out of your own way. Stop thinking about your own performance. Stop thinking, am I good enough? Do I need to add value? All the things that we do when we first train to become a coach. And instead, you just shift into this place from doing the role to just being it. And for me, that's magic. It's absolute, it is magic. It's gold dust. And if you can get to that point, then I feel that you've not just achieved that status, but you've achieved so much more about within yourself, I think, more than anything else.
So true. So true. It's not like we're just climbing the mountain, trying to reach the top. And after we reach, we're like, oh, there we go. We've done it now. Yeah, let's just get down now. But it's more than that, right? As you were saying, it's this journey of an enrichment. It's continuous, right? And it's just going from one level to another level. And it's not just going higher, but it's also going deeper in self, deeper in your understanding of people, deeper in understanding what space is all about and the respect of it and the trust.
Yeah.
And go on with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'd agree. Yeah, I think it's interesting because the biggest thing and the biggest learning for me was to genuinely get out of my own way. And I think when you're learning to be a coach, you have so many pressures on yourself. Am I doing it good enough? Will the client come back? Am I doing, am I helping them in the right way? And am I adding value? And I think as soon as you can release those, I suppose it's like anything, isn't it? If you just surrender to be in the moment and release those outcomes or expectations of self and others, then that's when you can get to a different place. For those that are going through this process, I would say keep going with it and just keep working at it. And, it's interesting because, meditation is, you call it meditation practice, and we call it coaching practice, so I don't think we'll ever be the finished articles, even as master coaches. I think there's always so much room for growth and scope in our own development. And for me, we're all a work in progress, and I certainly am a work in progress.
Same as what I say I'm a WIP, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant WIP.
Exactly.
Sometimes I think that's also a need to be forgiving to yourself.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it starts saying it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to ask you this question about your vision for you and your coaching journey ahead.
Okay.
What are you looking forward for?
Oh, that's a very good question. So my vision for myself is to continue to keep doing good work, good, grounded, honest work. And what I mean by that is to work with people in a really authentic way that encourages them to show up as their authentic self. Yeah. I suppose I've been working a lot recently, I suppose over the last kind of 10 years, but more recently I've been reviewing my purpose in life and why am I here and what am I here to do in this world and as a coach. And I would describe that, I think there are three aspects to me now. And these are the three things that I'd like to bring more into my coaching, which is I'm a coach, obviously. I'm a teacher, but I'm also a healer. And I think trying to combine those three things together, meaning that when I am working with a client, my purpose is to help them walk back home to their true selves. And so with that sense of that combination of not necessarily teaching, but so I suppose I can still do that when I'm teaching my students. But from a coaching perspective, to definitely help people get on the right path, come back home to their true selves, because that's what we're all here for, to be our true self.
That is so beautiful said. Thank you, Gillian. And thank you for the work that you're doing and will continue to do in the world. I often ask this question as the last one. And, we ask powerful questions. And in some ways, I don't really like the word powerful question, if you know what I'm trying to say. It is probably the most appropriate question at that moment, in that right context. So right now, just feeling the moment, what would be that question that you want to leave the audience with?
That's a good question because it makes me stop and think, which is also a sign of a good, powerful question. So thank you for that. So the question I'm going to pose is quite simple. What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? I love it. And you can ask that question in so many different ways, right? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Wow. Thank you. This has been a blast, Gillian, really. This is time when I say, please give us your handles, your social media links that we can, the audience, obviously, to get in contact with you. So please share away.
Okay, so I'm on Instagram at The Master Coach, and you can get me on my website, which is www.fullcircleglobal.com. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Any last thoughts before we close the show, Gillian?
No, I just want to say thank you so much. I've really loved actually having this conversation with you. And I'm so glad we can connect from different parts of the world, which is just fantastic. So thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure is all ours. And with that, I say, this has been the 100 Master Coaches show. Today with Gillian and myself, Mel. Signing off till the next one. Take care and bye for now.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.